There we go. I gotta stop eating so many grapes at night. I think the grapes are making me fatter. As if I wasn't fat already, huh? I got a thing for grapes. Really good grapes. How sinful of me. How are you doing this evening? I'd like to do a two-part video series on original Buddhism. I even don't like using the word Buddhism because the original denotation of this is something completely different. I'm more apt and able to discuss this topic than anybody else on YouTube. If you think that's egotistical, I absolutely don't care. I've been translating ancient Pali now for well over 23 plus years. That's the original Brahmi Prakrit language of earliest Buddhism, taught by Sakyamuni. That's not a name, by the way. People think that's a name. It's not. People use it as a name, but since basically nobody on this earth knows, it's an ancient dead language. It's been dead now for thousands of years. It literally means a Scythian sage. Sakya is Pali for Scythian. Muni means sage, so it literally means Scythian sage. Gautama's people are not what we would call Indians today. Of course, India didn't exist back then, and this is not a history lesson about Buddhism. This is about the actual philosophy, philosophia, the true metaphysics of Buddhism that I'm going to get into in this two-part series. A lot of people asked for this. Reason why I don't like to ever use the word Buddhism, or are you a Buddhist? Like, no, I'm not, but I am 100% in line with the original teachings thereof. But current Buddhism has nothing to do with the original article. I'm going to quote for you the famous Dr. A.K. Kumaraswamy. He wrote many, many dozens and dozens and hundreds of articles, dozens of books. And direct quote from him is, "Buddhism is most famous today for everything it originally never taught." And truer words have never been spoken. That's 100% correct. I'm going to go over a bunch of passages from Buddhism, because when people actually say, I'm a Buddhist, like, what do you know about Buddhism? Well, my teacher said, it's like, no, I'm not interested in what you were taught or what you believe. I was like, what do you know about the subject? Well, it's just like, it's a living thing, and it's just about, being good-hearted and seeking it, this is the reason why I want nothing to do with what is called Buddhism, because it's not authentic to the original article. Original or earliest Buddhism was nothing other than Neo-Advaita Vedanta. And people think, well, Advaita Vedanta was founded by Adi Sankara or Sri Shankaracharya, who... he's attributed to many different works. We know he really only wrote two things, Upadisa Sahasra and the Vivacchudamuni. There's even speculation about him writing one of those. But it was non-dual monism, and this is no different whatsoever other than the same thing of non-dual monism of the early Neoplatonists, a la Plotinus, Pythagoras, Numenius, Syrianus, Iamblichus, and so on and so forth. It is liberation ontology, based in wisdom. And I'm going to get to one of the most important passages, really the most important passage, because if you could stick a teaching into a nutshell, that's always a really good thing. If you could stick everything about something into a nutshell, then that means the nutshell, or the nut, if you will, sits at the center of all things which that teaches, because anything that's at the center means it's the spoke, the central axis or hub of the wheel of which everything springs out. And that one passage is Sulvimutta Chittasanabandham, which translated loosely means the thoroughly liberated chitta. It doesn't mean consciousness, which is consubstantial with the psychophysical. The thoroughly liberated chitta, which is nous or mind, means nirvana. That's the core, one of 3 or 4 passages, the core fundamental teachings of Buddhism. And it's a liberation ontology. It has nothing to do with morality. It's not about being moral or immoral. It's completely amoral. It's an amoral monism, liberation ontology based in wisdom. That's not my feeling or conviction or belief. It's what is doctrinally true. and undeniable. And that's where also too I have no connection with people that call themselves Buddhists, okay, just none, because nearly 100% of them, and I mean this literally, nearly 100%, they know nothing about doctrine, they know nothing about these. Well, if we're going to discuss something, why don't we discuss what it originally taught? And lacking a time machine, and by the way, the only pre-sectarian corpus of Buddhism is the Nikayas, the 5 Nikayas. And that's not part of the Theravadas. Theravada didn't exist until the 3rd century CE, and they were actually originally known as the Sarvastivadins, and their texts is Abhidhamma and Vinaya. It's not doctrine as far as the Nikayas, i.e. Digha Nikaya, Majjhima, Samyutta, and Gotara, and Kudaka Nikaya. So I'd like to go over some passages. The Buddha is a teacher of non-dualism, Advaitavadam, i.e. Advaita, monism. That's Mahavutapati 23 and Divananda 95:13. Here's another one. It occurs in many passages in the Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya 5.154, Digha Nikaya 2.100, Samyutta Nikaya 3.42, on and on. The Tathagata is meant without the mark of all things. In other words, there's no consubstantial or phenomenal marks. Tathagata literally, by the way, means having arrived at that, or the absolute, as in Tattvamasi. Tat meaning Brahman or the absolute. Agata is past tense, means you've arrived at. You're not going there, you're not traveling there, you are there. So the word Tathagata means you're standing in the center of all things, which of course is the axle, the unmoved mover. Ancient vehicles, today's vehicles, the axle does move, but ancient vehicles, it was just a solid rod staked to the vehicle, and the wheels spun around it. So it was the unmoved mover. It's the perfect metaphysical symbolism for the ancient Egyptians, the Greeks, the Indians, so on and so forth. I go on and on. So the Tathagata is meant without marks. The Tathagata dwells upward within the signless, self-directed chitta, or mind. There within Ananda dwell with the soul as your light, with the soul as your refuge, with none other as your refuge. And the Pali of that passage is Atta Dipa Viharati. Atta Sarana Anama Sarana. I don't know why I'm speaking ancient Pali, nobody knows what I'm saying, but anyway, here's Udana 81. By the way, the Udana and Irivutaka are two of the oldest parts of the Nikaya, because the Sutta Nipada too, and the reason when you're translating it, as well as the Sagatavagga Pali, the first book of the Samyutta Nikaya, when you're translating this stuff, not only is Pali an ancient dead language, this stuff is really, those particular books are really crushing your skull to translate them, because they are very, very, very old. You have to take my word on that one. You start sweating. Passages are so archaic. There is an unborn, an unoriginated, an unmade, and an unformed, i.e. the soul, i.e. Brahman. If there were not, O followers, the unborn, the unoriginated, and the unmade, and the unformed, there would be no way out for the born, the originated, the made, and the formed. That passage alone, and there are many countless thousands of passages, but none that succinct. Because in other passages they will lie about the translation. Well, it doesn't really say that. But this particular passage, there's no way to mistranslate it on purpose. And so it really causes a lot of a sphincter contracture of Buddhists. And when I say Buddhists, I mean the term loosely, Buddhists. That's Udana 81. The oldest texts of earliest Buddhism, where Gautama said, he's asked what his teachings are to be called. He calls it Brahmayana, Samyutta Nikaya 5.4. Brahmayana means path to the absolute, by the way. And what, O followers, does it mean Brahmanhood? This is our Aryatanyika Magga. It talks about the noble path of disobjectification. There are two teachings in all forms of monism speak of embodiment, and then, of course, liberation is disembodiment. Paticca Samuppada is just the ancient Pali word. It's called dependent origination, which is a really crude translation, but it starts off with a condition. The condition is avidya. But avidya is like a shadow. A shadow is not a thing. A shadow is an absence of light. Avidya is not a thing at all. Translated loosely as ignorance or agnosis, ancient Pali word avidya, or in Sanskrit avidya, same thing. It's a condition. It's a condition of something by something else, obviously. So people don't think logically and with very strict thought processes or retroductive analysis a la philosophy when they look at these passages. And Buddhists today, and I'm trying to draw a crude analogy, a modern Buddhist, I hate to use that word, it would be like a Christian who's like, not only never picked up a Bible, but it will never, I'm never going to touch this. Aren't you a Christian? Why wouldn't you ever read the Bible? Like, no, I don't want to. That's really what a modern Buddhist is like. Rituals and listening to your guru. See, this is why I have no connection to what is called Buddhism, because what it is called is not what it actually is. I could call this rock an apple, but it ain't an apple. So I hope I made that abundantly clear. How is it, followers, that one is a Brahman, deemed crossed over and gone beyond death and Punabhavatar, or again becoming, or transmigration? Doesn't mean rebirth. There's a distinction between transmigration and rebirth, by the way. Herein, him whose chitta, or nous, loosely translated as mind, but mind in English means like something psychophysical, but this is not psychophysical. Consciousness, or vijnana, is psychophysical, but not mind. Is free, devoid of defilements, is liberated by wisdom. Such how is one is deemed a Brahman, deemed crossed over and gone beyond. Anguttara Nikaya 2.6. All the people say that Gautama is the supreme teacher of the way leading to the union with Brahman. Brahman is not a god, by the way. Okay? You're confused. You look up and you'll say Brahman God. No. It refers to the absolute. That's not my opinion, a feeling, or belief. It's a fact. So if you look that up like on Wikipedia or something, you might come up with, so Brahman is an old Indian god. No. There's two different Brahmins in ancient India, by the way. So one refers to the absolute, the other one refers to a deity. So we're not talking about some type of creationism here, or old dude in the clouds with the beard sort of worship. No. This is a liberation ontology about union with the absolute through disobjectification. It's amoral monism, a liberation ontology. The Tathagata, there's an important passage, digging at KO 2.84. Excuse me, Tathagata, the Buddha, is a designation for meaning become Brahman, or Brahma-bu. So, and that's what I told you. The word Tathagata means you're standing at the absolute, which means, of course, you are Brahma-bu, or having become, or at the station point of the absolute, i.e. Brahman. The well-centered chitta, in other words, an unperturbed chitta. It's like, what is a field that is not moving or perturbed? Because all fields are ether perturbation modalities, right? So what would be an unperturbed field? Well, it wouldn't be a field at all, because a field by definition is manifestation. So a well-centered chitta is the path for attainment to Brahman. Samyutta Nikaya 4.118. Here's another one for everybody that thinks that, like, well, what do you do meditations? Like, no, theurgy is not meditation. Meditation doesn't refer to anything. So what's the path of this? It's disobjectification, specific theurgic methodology of disobjectification. And people love to ask, how do you engage in disobjectification? It's not blanking out your mind, and it's not thinking about using your mind to crush your mind, because a lot of people, I need to stop thinking, I need to stop thinking, I need to stop thinking. It's not that at all. It's neither one of those, obviously. Anyway, this important passage. The create, i.e. phenomena, is sacrificed or consumed in the fires of the uncreate. This is the meaning of the word jhana or samadhi. Parithamabhaga 1.70 passage. The word samadhi, which the anti-intellectual, unintelligent, silly Westerner calls meditation. That word's root is jhana or jayati. It comes from the word jayati, which means to burn. Here we got a fire over here, right? Not a real fire. It means you're throwing the create. And by the way, this ancient idea made its word into the Kalevala. It's a really, really ancient idea of throwing that which is beautiful back into the fire. You remember The Lord of the Rings, or the whole movie, which was written by Tolkien, but Tolkien took, or stole, if you will, those ideas from the Kalevala and other Nordic sources. The whole movie is about little Frodo throwing the ring back into the fires of Mount Doom. The ring is so pretty and nobody could, oh my God. That's what phenomena is. and it's about throwing the create back into the fires of the uncreate. Not literally. Disobjectification is throwing it away. That is what is meant by the dead man walking. In other words, someone who's died before they physically died, right? Because death has nothing to do with liberation. Death is just the breaking of the radio. That doesn't change anything about the signal, does it? Because consciousness is a perfect analogy with the broadcast, because a broadcast is on a signal. Now, to a common fool, a broadcast is the signal. I'm listening to channel 88.9, which is NPR, and Terry Gross. Man, have you ever seen Terry Gross? No. I'm sorry. The broadcast is the consubstantiality of the radio in this. I used to listen to NPR a lot, just for classical music, however. Their news, of course, is pure propaganda. Reminds me of the BBC, by the way. BBC is horrible propaganda. When I lived in Russia, I had to listen to BBC all the time, because that's all the English news that would come through my radio living in Russia. Anyway, back to the topic. So that's what the word Janarjayati, the meaning of the word samadhi is. So samadhi means meditation. I sit there on a cushion and blank out my mind. What? That's not liberation. That's not theurgy. That's not disobjectification. Well, that's what my teacher taught me, and I just don't believe you. And this is how they think. That's why I have no connection to these people. I don't even like to use the word Buddhism. And that word, by the way, didn't even exist until the 16th century, okay? We're talking about the original article about 1,700 years prior to that. The Lord Buddha is that, with a capital T, i.e. Brahman, which makes the Brahman wheel move. In other words, the unmoved mover. By the way, that's what they do in Tibet, too. They have all those prayer wheels that they spin, you know. And they took that from doctrine, but they mistranslated it, and it's been mistranslated for nearly 1,700 years. Believe it or not. You got these people spinning the wheels like, the Buddha means the wheel turner. Here's where the devil is in the details. The original doctrine doesn't say is a wheel turner. He'll say, what's the difference? Sounds like you're saying there's a big difference. You have all these people spinning away. What it says is the term Buddha, which is the Akamkana, by the way, a non-person, a non-entity. People say, by the way, here's a fact. All those gold and bronze and silver statues, whatever, Buddha, all over the world, giant ones, little ones, those are all, by doctrinal definition, a heresy, because that's the Buddha statue. Like, no, it's not, because the Buddha is Akamkana, which literally means a non-person. That's why earliest original iconography, Buddhist iconography in India, like Sanchi Tope, sort of, people are surrounded, in hands in prayer, not in prayer, but in reverence, around an empty seat. It's not that someone was sitting in the seat. In other words, you can't designate a Buddha as a physical, farting, flesh and blood person, because that would be heresy, because the definition of a Buddha is Akamkana, which literally means a non-person, a non-entity, a non-physical, psychophysical being made of flesh, blood, urine, and poop, and all the rest of it. So, here's a little fact for you, by the way. Every Buddha statue is by earliest Buddhists, not my opinion or feeling or belief, it's fact. By earliest Buddhist doctrine is heretical. Not that it was like some sort of evil to do that, but worship of a physical flesh and blood body is heresy of true liberation ontology metaphysics, which earliest original Buddhism actually was. I find that fascinating, because I keep seeing people, like doing this number to like Buddha statues, giant gold statues, are covered in gold. It's like, whoa. Well, that's not what a Buddha is. Gautama was the physical being who, in the Majjhima Nikaya, when he was dying, he was literally doubled over in pain and barfing and retching, and literally that's what the original Pali said. Doubled over in immense pain, barfing, retching, blah, 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 and poof, kick the bucket. That is Gautama, a psychophysical entity. So, anyway, the soul, or Svabhava, having attained to the soul by means of wisdom and disobjectification, means Brahmabhu, or having become Brahmas. Majjhima Nikaya 341. Last passage in this video number 1, Samhita Nikaya 5.73. What is the one benefit, Master Gautama, for which you exist for? The one thing, follower, that the Tathagata exists for is the fruit and emancipation by illumination. In other words, wisdom. That's the one thing that the Tathagata exists for. Actually doesn't say exist, because exist means something specific, means to be outside of yourself. Existence. In other words, it's the one thing that everything is directed towards, is what the actual original Pali says. Everything that the Tathagata's energy is directed towards is the fruit of emancipation or transcendence by means of wisdom, i.e. illumination, of course. So this ends video number 1. I'd like to go on to some other passages in video number 2, because if you can't stick Buddhism into a nutshell, and I can, and have a greater ability to do that than anybody else on YouTube, even if you think that's egotistical, which I don't care, it's still true, then you don't understand it. And even in this video 1, I've stuck it all into a nutshell. But I'd like to go into some succinct details in video number 2 after this. I hope you like this video. If you do, any donation is greatly welcome, because I'm still a psychophysical being that has to pay bills and feed my fat, ugly face. And property taxes, car insurance, house. Anyway, any donations always welcome in the description below. But you can tell me how much you can't stand me. Anything is okay. Do whatever makes you feel good. Okay. Lux e Veritas. Check out video number 2, which is directly after this one, and continuation of the subject. Thank you.